Welcome back to another episode of the Owl Talk podcast. In this episode, we welcome back Sigma Pi Fraternity's Grand Sage Christian Miele for another Fireside chat. We have a bunch of topics that we're going to cover today, including a big announcement about the 58th Biennial Convocation. So get ready for a lot of information about the fraternity to come your way in the next few minutes. But first, welcome back to the Owl Talk podcast, Christian.
Joe, thanks for having me back.
Of course. Hey, look, I'm not a big believer in holding back information or trying to build up to a crescendo on certain announcements. So maybe we can start our conversation by making the big announcement about the location of the 58th Biennial Convocation. What do you have to tell our listeners about that?
Yeah, so very exciting announcement for all the brothers and listeners out there. The Grand Council just voted unanimously that the site of our 58th Biennial Convocation will be once again sunny Orlando, Florida. And so we'll be there at the Rosen Center in Orlando from June 18th to the 21st, 2026. So mark your calendar, save the date. We're already looking forward to it.
That is awesome. I love that. You know, we were last in Orlando in 2014, and I remember it very well for a lot of reasons. In fact, my observations at that convocation are largely what led me to run for the Grand Council in 2016. So who knows? Maybe there's an alumni volunteer or an undergrad who'll be inspired to do more after attending that 2026 convocation in Orlando. Hey, have you had a chance with you and your team to figure out what maybe some of the events might be at convocation in Orlando, or are we still a ways off from that?
Yeah, we're not quite there yet, but something you just said just sort of maybe want to sort of, for the listeners who have never been to a convocation, maybe just talk a little bit about what convocation is and what they can expect, even though the agenda hasn't been set yet per se. But for the listeners out there who have never been, the convocation is our biennial meeting of the fraternity's what's known as the Grand Chapter, which is the supreme governing body of Sigma Pi, which comprises delegates from each of our undergraduate chapters and our alumni clubs. Chapters get 2 votes in convocation. Each alumni club gets 1, so long as these groups are in good standing. And then also we have a number of our past Grand Officers and of course our current Grand Council members who also have a vote. And this is the opportunity once every 2 years to amend the Constitution and bylaws if necessary, make policy decisions for the betterment of the national organization, to elect a new Grand Council to serve for the ensuing 2 years after that. But more importantly, I would say it's an opportunity for brothers to get together and celebrate our fraternal bonds and to rekindle those bonds. For many of us, you and I included, Joe, we've been going to these events since we were undergraduates, and it's really an opportunity for us to reconnect with friends that we've made in different chapters across the country over the years. And so it's something that I always very much look forward to.
Yeah, I think that's something that stands out to me about convocation, Christian, is that there really is a reunion-like atmosphere, a celebration of Sigma Pi Fraternity. And what's great about it is that you get to celebrate the fraternity in all of its formats and all of its ways. In other words, if you're into the ritual, hey, there's probably going to be a mock ritual there where we probably will initiate 1 or 2 members while we're at convocation. If you're into celebrating the accolades and the triumphs and the successes of our undergraduate chapters, oh boy, do we have a whole lot of that celebration going on. If you're into talking about all the great things that our alumni members and our alumni clubs have done over the last 2 years, we've got something at convocation for you too. And by the way, if you just like getting together and engaging in that fellowship and that fraternity and that brotherhood and maybe going out to a restaurant or going out and hanging out at night or going golfing, we're going to have all that too. It is one of the best things that we do in Sigma Pi, and I'm looking forward to Orlando.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Hey, let's hop topics again now, and let's talk about something that happened a few weeks ago. Let's have a recap of our Founders Day celebration. So for our listeners that don't know, and I'm sure it's very few listeners that aren't aware of this since we took that Founders Day live stream and made a podcast out of it, Christian hosted a Founders Day live stream, and I was happy to participate, where we talked a little bit about Sigma Pi Fraternity's history. Maybe you could give us a bit of a recap of that event and any outcomes that you've heard from it.
Yeah, so you know, one of the big areas of focus for this Grand Council is connectivity and providing avenues for brothers, both collegiate members and alumni members, to get together. And sometimes travel is a barrier, and sometimes money is a barrier. But we wanted to do something sort of original this year and have our first ever national live stream celebration of Founders Day. And so that's what we did. So, for the listeners out there, past Grand Sage Palazzolo and I put on about an hour and 15-minute talk on the lost history of the fraternity, which kind of consisted of unpacking some of the lesser known elements of our origin story and talking a little bit about what made Sigma Pi into the vibrant organization it is today. And it was really an interesting way to get people together, leveraging technology that didn't cost anybody anything. And so it was a very successful event. I would say we had, during the live stream, over 500 viewers were tuning in or out at any point during the event. And then afterward, we had probably another 100 plus. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 or so brothers of Sigma Pi got to experience this celebration. And as Joe mentioned, there is an Owl Talk podcast episode that's just the audio version. But if you want to see the audio or see the video and have the audio experience, then you can certainly go to the Sigma Pi YouTube channel, and there is a video of the event. And so, yeah, it was great. And I think it's, hopefully the start of a new annual tradition for the fraternity to get together and celebrate the birthday of Sigma Pi each year, and also talk about what makes the organization so special.
Yeah, I love that so many folks joined us while it was going on. I think, as you said, at any one point there were, I guess the high point was around 500 folks that joined us, which is funny because when you and I were planning this with the team at the executive office, we thought maybe there'll be 5 people who join us, and it turned out it was several hundred more than that. And I can tell you from the feedback that I've heard from folks, I'm interested in the feedback that you've heard from folks. The feedback that I heard, which was admittedly primarily from undergrads, though I did hear from some alumni volunteers. The undergrads told me that not only did they log in, but they logged in groups. So they had it. They had the Zoom casting up on, or the YouTube rather, casting up on their television in their living room. I know there was a group of about 10 or 11 folks over here on my campus at Monmouth who were watching it in one of the student center rooms. So I know that there was even more folks who got to enjoy this, and I wonder if you've heard from folks about it too.
Yeah, so if you kind of look at the comments in the live chat, Joe, I mean, everybody seemed to really enjoy the content. And what we've seen is that our Owl Talk podcast episodes that have the greatest number of views tend to be the ones that talk about the history of our organization. And so there's a real demand for information about Sigma Pi's storied past and history. And so we want to make sure we're providing content that's of interest to our members. And, it's really the history and the ritual are two of the things that really connect us. They not only separate us from other fraternities, but they really sort of galvanize us as brothers, and it's part of our shared experience. And so, there's, while I was also pleasantly surprised that we had, 600 some odd people who tuned in at one time or another. It's great to see that level of interest in this. And it's, hopefully, like I said, a great annual tradition that we can continue moving forward. And, a big thing for us on the Grand Council is this idea of affinity being the key to our organization's success. So the sense of, the deep emotional connection to the fraternity, starting that early in the new member process when somebody just joins the organization, and then providing those continuing opportunities to engage with the things that make Sigma Pi throughout the lifespan. And so that was sort of this was our first attempt, I should say, at doing that. And again, I think it was pretty successful and something we can certainly continue to build on.
Yeah, people love to hear about the history and the background of their organizations. By the way, you mentioned that maybe they might have listened to it on the Owl Talk podcast, because that's what we did for the Owl Talk that week. I just found out the other day that we've hit over 5,000 downloads on the Owl Talk podcast. And I know, just because of what you said, that we probably got over that number because of the Founders Day live stream, because people were tuning in to catch up what they missed the day before. So we do have a very rich and interesting history. But I want to jump topics again. I know that there is a lot of volunteer work being done behind the scenes right now. One of those efforts includes surveys, surveying our members about a variety of topics, including the undergraduates about their ritual work, and also surveying our alumni clubs about their operations and their structure. I know it's early in this work, but do you have any preliminary results to share on at least those two efforts?
Yeah. So we have a number of surveys that are still, I would say, technically in the field. We're still trying to get some additional respondents for those surveys. But on the undergraduate side, for our ritual survey, I would say well over a third of our chapters have already submitted responses. So we're starting to kind of look and unpack and analyze the data points that we're getting back. And as you might suspect, there's a wide variety, a wide range of responses to the various questions. For the listeners, the idea here, the big idea behind the ritual survey, is to kind of take stock of where we are as an organization, chapter by chapter, in our understanding and of the ritual, our practice of the ritual, and the application of it. There's a ritual equipment inventory in the survey so that we can better understand what you all need in terms of the items to perform the ceremonies properly, and then so that will allow us to go then talk to our vendors to make sure we have enough stock of those items. But really, it's to kind of have a dialogue between the Grand Council and the chapters about this ritual, this thing we call ritual, which is really the expression of our values at its core. And so it's one of the more important things I think that we do as an organization. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a source of our common bond. It's a source of affinity, loyalty, all the things that make for a strong fraternal organization. So in terms of initial or preliminary results, I would say that we're getting a wide variety of responses in terms of the performance of each of the various ceremonies. I mean, a couple chapters have been brutally honest, and they said, "Hey, look, we don't do the initiation ceremony at all. We don't do any ritual. We want to, but we don't know too much about it." Invariably, what you see there is it might be a chapter that doesn't have an advisor or much alumni support, and so the ritual, like many other things in a fraternity, is a tradition. It's a tradition that you have to work to preserve and make a focal point of the chapter. And so it was really good to get that feedback. It was also good to hear from those groups that don't make ritual a priority, not because they don't want to, but because they really haven't had that experience. Is that they're willing to learn. They're willing to they're open to the idea of incorporating it into what their chapters do. And I know, Joe, you and I talk a lot about, you have to have, a strong ritual presence in the chapter, or else basically it's just a bunch of guys, it could be any fraternity, but they just happen to have Sigma Pi letters, but they don't really know the first thing about Sigma Pi's values or the things that we hold dear. So, one of the things that we put out there was, hey, please, answer the survey honestly. There are no wrong answers. We just want good, honest feedback so that we can then make good policy decisions and provide that level of support to get chapters, more engaged in this. For the chapters out there who are gunning for awards at the convocation, it's no secret, it's no surprise that the chapters who typically win, the Grand Sages Award and some of the other top awards at the chapter level are those that really make the ritual, a pinnacle of sort of what they do. So yeah, that was, again, we encourage if you're listening and you haven't yet submitted it, we're going to be doing some more, outreach to get some more survey responses in. But yeah, I just wanted to thank the Ritual Committee for their work in this endeavor. And then we have an alumni club member survey that's in the field, and that's part of a larger effort to better understand how we can optimize the alumni experience in every respect for Sigma Pi Fraternity. So what we're seeking to do first and foremost with the alumni club members is, hey, what does it mean to be a member of alumni club? What types of activities do you do? How are you structured and organized? How often do you meet? How much are your dues? Do you even assess dues? A lot of those sort of operational type of questions, because over the years, I've sort of, and I'm sure you would agree, having been Grand Sage for 4 years, you did a lot of traveling, Joe, and you'd probably agree that, an alumni club in one locale is vastly different from another one. I mean, some they primarily exist for the social benefit of alumni members, while others, they think it's their primary responsibility to support a chapter or to raise funds for a scholarship. And so it's really kind of interesting. We want to get a better handle on what these groups are doing so that we can decide if we need more of a universal experience or if we need to enhance or expand the alumni club experience. And that's where kind of phase two comes in. So once we get the survey results, or I should say, once we complete the survey with the alumni club members, then what we're going to do is start focus grouping with our peer national fraternities and sororities to kind of see what's happening across the industry and how these alumni clubs are functioning, or they might call them something else like an alumni chapter or a graduate chapter, and what opportunities they're offering to their members, and what are all those structural things, the dues and the meeting schedule and the extent of what they do. I mean, I think we talked about in a couple other episodes earlier in the year, Joe, that there are graduate chapters of other Greek letter organizations that actually initiate postgraduate folks into their organization, and might that be an opportunity? So I know you had asked the question about preliminary survey data. There's a couple data points I'd love to share. Number one is that an overwhelming majority of the alumni club member respondents have said that they would be interested in initiating postgraduate men into Sigma Pi. And number two is we asked a question, and it had two possible responses. And response A, and basically the question was, which of the following statements do you most agree with? It was something to that effect. The first one is Sigma Pi exists essentially for the sole benefit of its undergraduate members, and the alumni essentially exist to support the undergraduate member experience. That was the first possible response. And the second one was Sigma Pi Fraternity is a lifelong membership organization that exists to develop all of its members, alumni and undergraduates, over the lifespan. And over 90% of the responses we received so far chose the latter, chose the second option. And that was very encouraging because, at least the way I view Sigma Pi, it is a lifelong commitment. It's a lifelong membership organization. It's not something that you or I did our 4 years as undergraduates, but something that we've been doing ever since, and something that we plan to do for the rest of our lives, or as long as we're able to. And so I think starting with that premise, I think will allow us to make a lot of cultural changes in terms of the way we view the role of our alumni clubs, and how they can enhance the overall Sigma Pi experience, better support our undergraduates, get more alumni members engaged. And when you engage our alumni, then we're going to have more volunteer support, more mentors for our chapters, and hopefully more potential donors to our foundations, right? So that means more educational programs for our undergraduates, and that means more scholarships for our undergraduates. And that all is part of our creed, which is to promote scholarship. If we can, again, give you guys scholarship money, or help you guys attend an educational program at the national or regional level, that's just going to help set you up for success in life after college. So, very excited what I'm seeing so far in terms of the results. We still have a few clubs that have yet to respond. So we're working to get those responses in, because what we really want is full participation in both the Ritual and Alumni Club member survey, so we can have a real accurate picture of what is going on in Sigma Pi throughout the United States.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. We could dig into those results for an hour, I'm sure, and never really get to finish talking about them. Yeah, I'm just reminded, as you were talking about the Ritual results, one of the things that you and I always talk about, which you referenced, is that I've been big on saying you don't want to have local fraternities wearing national letters, and that's essentially what you wind up having when chapters choose not to engage in the Ritual, because the Ritual makes us us.
Right.
Or to your point earlier, if you're not doing that, then you're just a group of guys wearing the same T-shirt, and in that case, why be in a fraternity? Why not just be the community service club, or why not be the
Yeah,
social
just
club or
be a
something?
social club, and yeah, I mean, I 100% agree.
So when I went out there, again, visited 111 chapters when I was Grand Sage, and then 112th visiting Zeta chapter when I was past Grand Sage. Unfortunately, we do have a couple of groups out there that are like that. There are local fraternities that wear national letters. But what I always was inspired by, and what I think you'll find, is that um, they do want to be part of this thing. And I'm reminded of must be a year and a half ago now. one of our chapters here in the Greater New Jersey province, they told us, "Hey, look, we haven't done the initiation ritual in a while, and we need some chapter to help us." Well, lo and behold, you said that it's no big surprise the chapters that rank the highest are the ones who make the ritual a big part of their, a centerpiece of their experience. Well, lo and behold, Iota Tau chapter at St. John said, "We'll initiate them. We'll initiate those guys." And so they stayed after one of our province workshops and initiated a whole group of guys. Last spring, there's another chapter in the Greater New Jersey province that said, "Hey, you did it for that chapter. We want to be initiated too. We haven't done this in a while." And so they stayed behind our province workshop, and the Delta Beta chapter initiated them. So, I love the fact that our undergrads want more of this. They want to be surrounded by Sigma Pi. It's very promising for the future. Um, we could talk
Well, then
about
we hope to take these results, and we hope to develop some strategies and some action plans as a result. And the ritual committee is going to play a front and center role with that. So, just for our listeners out there who maybe want a little bit more, mentoring when it comes to the performance of these ceremonies, kind of what does it mean? How do we incorporate ritual education into our chapter meetings, etc. We're really hoping that the ritual committee can play that role and can jump on a Zoom call with your EC and can have that conversation. Or if there's a ritual committee member in your state, maybe they can take a trip out. I know on April the 13th, I'll be visiting our ADA chapter at Purdue with one of our past Grand Sages and with our Grand Herald Bradley Ferguson, and we're going to be doing a ritual workshop for the chapter. And so it's things like that can kind of enhance members' understanding of this.
Love that. Love that opportunity. You also appointed me to run a membership education and experience committee. And our updates are also preliminary from this committee. I just met with one of our committee members about his work. And part of what he was doing for us is he was testing out different local census models so we can get a handle on the undergraduates that compose our chapters. And for our part, Christian, there are a few reasons why we're trying to collect some of this demographic data. First, there are some, let's call them hot topic issues in higher education right now. And one of them is the metric around first generation college students. There's a couple of definitions around what it means to be first generation, but the issue has to do with whether or not anyone in a student's family has attended or completed college before them. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I think the Grand Council that you and I served on together in the last biennium was 100% composed of first generation college alumni, and that included our CEO, Jonathan Frost.
This is true. Yeah, 100% of the council and our executive director. None of their parents had attended college. We're all first generation college students, college graduates.
So we want to collect that information so that you, as our board chair, Grand Sage, John is our CEO, that you have that data available to you. And then the second reason that we're trying to collect this information is just generally getting a better understanding of who our undergraduates are these days. So, for example, when I was in your position, I used to go to these national conferences. I know that you do too. And I was surprised that most of the other fraternities and the sororities, they had at least some understanding of who comprised their organizations. We were mostly assuming who comprised our organizations based on what we saw in our visits and what we saw on social media. So having that data can be very powerful. And then I guess a related third reason why we're engaging in this census at work, loops back into the growth opportunities task force that you set up earlier in the biennium. And that is, they're trying to find ways for us to grow. And we want to be sure that we're providing them with the data that can be used in those growth efforts. So, for example, being able to sit down at certain schools and tell them that, I'm going to make up these numbers, that Sigma Pi Fraternity's undergraduate population is comprised of 40% brothers of Western European descent, 25% Latino brothers, 15% Asian brothers, 10% brothers of African or Caribbean descent, and so on. Those are powerful statistics to have at your disposal. And then if you can layer in that 75% of our undergraduates are also first generation college students, now you're making real inroads into proving with data the inherent value that Sigma Pi Fraternity brings to our campus partners. So for our work so far, we're just trying to find the best method to collect this data. Our first run at a sample census maybe got a little bit too deep into some of these categories, so we're going to clean that up a little bit and keep testing to try to find a model that works for everyone. And then, speaking of the value that we bring to our campus partners and our desire to grow our numbers, maybe we can hop to a final topic here, Christian. Let's talk about those campuses that we're going to or going back to this spring. Do you have an update for our listeners on our expansion and our growth efforts?
Yeah, so our staff, our professional staff, has been really hard at work um, expanding the organization, and one of our areas of focus is going back to campuses where we once had a Sigma Pi chapter, but for whatever reason it had gone dormant over the years. And so I'm excited to announce that on April the 12th, um, I'll be heading up to Bloomington, Indiana to reinstall our beta chapter at Indiana University. And I'll be there with Grand Herald Bradley Ferguson. And then earlier this month, we actually recolonized our Gamma Delta group at Slippery Rock University and our Epsilon Pi group at Christopher Newport University. And so those are two sort of legacy schools where we've had Sigma Pi chapters. They have been closed for a number of years, and we made a priority to work with their alumni to recolonize on these campuses so that we'll hopefully be bringing these chapters back. And so, and then I think it's spring break right now in many parts of the country, but after spring break at my alma mater, Towson University, I know the staff will be trying to recolonize my home chapter, Ada New chapter at Towson. And then I believe that they're going to be then setting their sights on getting us back to Gamma Sigma at Mizzou. And so again, the big focus on returning to the campuses where we had chapters to sort of reinvigorate the Sigma Pi family at these institutions. So really, really excited about that. And certainly if you're an alum out there and your chapter is closed, please reach out if you think that there's a group of alum who are committed to working with the executive office and with the Grand Council to reconstitute your chapter. We'd love to get back to all these campuses.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that. Hey, speaking of these alum and how they might get involved in getting their chapter back, I know there's a lot that goes into it, but maybe just briefly you can give a thumbnail sketch of what are some of the things that those alumni at Christopher Newport or Slippery Rock did to help facilitate us going back to those campuses.
Yeah, let's take Slippery Rock. I mean, such an active, enthusiastic group of alum there who they formed an alumni club. They chartered an alumni club to sort of wrap around advisory support around the collegiate members of the chapter. And they also raised money into a chapter educational fund, or a CEF as it's called. And once your alumni raise $10,000 into this fund, then you can begin awarding scholarships on an annual basis to the undergraduate members of that chapter. And so you're helping these undergraduate members, but it's also a great recruitment tool. So if there's a college student who's on the fence between joining Sigma Pi or some other fraternity, maybe the difference maker is, hey, we're offering educational support, we're offering scholarships for our membership on a recurring basis, on an annual basis. And this is just one way that our organization, again, is invested in the success of its members. So, hats off both to Slippery Rock and the Christopher Newport alum. What was interesting about Christopher Newport was a lot of support from our Old Dominion University chapter, support from our William and Mary chapter. So you had undergraduate members of chapters in Virginia, not too far from the Christopher Newport campus, who were coming in to help with recruitment efforts and part of the training of the new members there. And so I love seeing that cross-chapter collaboration and partnership and experience. I think it really speaks to the value and to the strength and power of a national fraternity, as you kind of alluded to earlier.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. Hey, this was great, Christian. Thanks for coming back on the Owl Talk podcast. Give our listeners a fireside chat style update. Before we go, you have any final parting words, maybe some ideas for our listeners?
Yeah, well, lots of other opportunities coming up. We have the Tony Cyrus Leadership Summit, which will be coming up. There's limited spots available for that, so make sure to register early. That's a leadership program put on by Sigma Pi University. We have a first ever recruitment academy that's taking place this April. So it's March 18th as we're recording this. So the same day that we're rechartering Beta Chapter, we have a recruitment academy in Nashville. So that we're kind of it's kind of a prototype. We're kind of doing a trial run of this to see if it's something that would be a value add for our chapters. I remember at Convocation, a lot of chapter delegates and members came up to the members of the Grand Council and said, "Hey, we really need help with recruitment." So we kind of took that that feedback and now we're kind of operationalizing it and providing that level of recruitment support. And I definitely want to hear from our members out there. And so, feel free to shoot me an email at grandsage@sigmapi.org. I'm active on Instagram. So my handle is grand_sage_the number 49. So, definitely reach out on either of those through either of those channels and would love to connect, hear your ideas, talk about some of the good stuff that's happening across the fraternity.
Awesome. Thank you again, Christian. Hey, for all of our listeners, remember, you can stay up to date on the latest in the world of Sigma Pi Fraternity by following us across social media. We are at Sigma Pi, all one word, on Instagram, X, and Facebook. On YouTube, we are at Sigma Pi Fraternity, also all one word. Thank you to everyone who listened to this episode, and we look forward to you joining us for the next Owl Talk podcast.